The year is 1943. The location is the former German-occupied Soviet city of Stalingrad. And this is the aftermath of one of history's most brutal battles. Ruins are everywhere, covered in a thick blanket of snow. Smoke drifts through the bombed-out buildings, and solitary soldiers trudge through the wasteland, readying themselves for the fight ahead. This is the story of the Battle of Stalingrad. In the summer of 1942, Adolf Hitler was at the height of his power. After 2 years of aggression, Germany had conquered much of Europe. But Hitler wanted more. His insatiable desire for land and power took him to Russia, where he hoped to defeat the Soviet Union once and for all. With the vast majority of Europe under his control, it was the biggest threat to his domination. As the German army advanced deeper into Soviet territory, they came across the city of Stalingrad. Controlling this strategic location would be a stepping stone to achieving his ultimate goal of capturing the oil fields in the Caucasus. The battle began when German aircraft began to bomb the city from above, targeting both military installations and the civilian population. Tanks rolled into the outskirts of the city and troops advanced on all sides. It wasn't long before the first houses were burning and the first barricades were set up. Here we see an animated map depicting the German advance towards Stalingrad. We can see the main thrust coming from the north as German forces roll through small towns and villages on their way to the city. Other forces come from the east and west, slowly pinching the city like a pair of tweezers. It won't be long before Stalingrad is completely surrounded. Soviet resistance stiffened as the German advance slowed. The city became a scene of some of the most intense urban fighting in history. Ruined buildings became fortresses, and every street had its defenders. There were Soviet snipers stationed on every rooftop, keeping a sharp lookout for any movement. One of the most famous Soviet snipers was Vasily Zaitsev. Although there are some doubts over the validity of his claims, his tally of 400 confirmed kills made him something of a legend. He was so good that the Germans literally tried to assassinate him. When not engaged by enemy forces, civilians helped dig trenches and repair damaged buildings. Women and children could be seen carrying away wounded soldiers or collecting water from wells. It was every man for himself in Stalingrad. As the weeks went by, the situation inside the city became increasingly desperate. Food and medical supplies were running low, and the remaining citizens were forced to flee the city. Those who did stay behind lived in fear of being caught in the crossfire. Here we see German tanks advancing down a street. They smash through a barricade, sending debris flying into the air. Explosions erupt from windows as tank rounds rip through wooden structures. Civilians run in terror as they try to take cover. But what about the fighting in the streets? How exactly did it look? To answer this question, we only have to look at other major cities captured by the Germans during World War II, such as Rotterdam, Warsaw, and Leningrad. Buildings were reduced to rubble as bombs fell from the sky and tanks rolled through the streets. Entire apartment blocks were wiped out by artillery barrages. Streets turned into rivers as water mains burst and fire raged throughout the city. Homes were abandoned as families fled to safety or worse. Those that stayed behind huddled in their basements, hoping for the best. Inside the ruined buildings, it was a case of room-to-room fighting. Here, German soldiers stormed through an apartment building, kicking open doors and firing their rifles into the rooms. Explosions sent debris raining down from the ceilings. They moved from room to room, clearing the building of Soviet resistance. Suddenly, a wall collapses, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The fighters cough as they try to make their way through the rubble. A wounded German soldier limps through the carnage. Blood stains his fatigues as he desperately seeks medical attention. Another German shouts at him, urging him to move faster. The fate of the city hangs in the balance as the fighting rages. Another great danger in city fighting is the risk of friendly fire. As German and Soviet troops battled across Stalingrad, there were inevitable mistakes made. Here, a German fighter runs through a street. He ducks for cover as a tank approaches. In the confusion of war, neither side could tell who was friend or foe, so the fighter raises his hands in surrender. But the driver does not slow down and runs him over. The fighter's helmet flies off his head and his body is dragged along the floor. The tank then reverses, knocking the fighter's lifeless body over. It must have been a traumatic experience for everyone involved. While the city was mostly in ruins, the battle still raged on. Men fought on rooftops using Lewis guns and Pesh submachine guns. Explosions lit up the night sky as Molotov cocktails and incendiary bombs were thrown from building to building. Soldiers clung to the last remnants of hope as they advanced into the unknown. All around them, the city crumbled into dust. But why did the Germans want Stalingrad so badly? Was it just another city in the Soviet Union? No, far from it. For the Germans, Stalingrad represented the gateway to the vast oil fields in the Caucasus region. If they could capture the city, they would have a base from which to launch further attacks. But the Soviets had other plans. They had prepared Stalingrad for defense long before the Germans arrived. The city was a fortress, and the Soviets were determined to hold it at all costs. On November 1942, the Soviets launched a massive counterattack. Artillery fire rained down on German positions, killing and wounding hundreds. Waves of Soviet soldiers attacked, trying to break through German lines. The Germans were caught off guard and soon found themselves pushed back. This marked the beginning of the end for the German army. Bit by bit, the Soviets closed in, cutting off supplies and reinforcements. Soon, the German Sixth Army was completely encircled. German soldiers looked around in horror as thousands upon thousands of Russians approached. They were trapped and outnumbered. Fleeing was impossible. Fighting seemed pointless. There was only one option left. Some German soldiers threw down their weapons and surrendered. Others did the same, but were bayoneted by Soviet soldiers. Many froze to death in the bitter cold. Those that did survive were eventually taken prisoner and marched into the frozen wilderness. By February 1943, the entire German Sixth Army had surrendered. Over 900,000 German soldiers were now in Soviet hands. The battle for Stalingrad was finally over. The cost had been immense. Hundreds of thousands of German and Soviet soldiers had been killed. Cities and villages had been destroyed. Families had been torn apart. But the victory was a crucial one. It marked a turning point in the war, after which the Germans never really recovered. As the snow fell on Stalingrad, the silence was deafening. Frozen soldiers lay abandoned in the streets, their bodies contorted in their final moments of life. Homes and buildings were destroyed and charred, a testament to the fierce fighting that had taken place within them. The once proud German army was now a shadow of its former self, beaten and demoralized. The war was far from over, but the outcome was clear. The Axis powers had lost the momentum and the Allies were on the offensive. The world would never be the same again. We end this week's episode with a dramatic pause, inviting you to reflect on the events you've just witnessed. What do you think of the Battle of Stalingrad? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content. Thank you for watching.